As Finance Minister, sir, are you concerned about the perception that's building about India abroad? Industry internationally expressing a vote of no confidence in this government. We've seen FDI inflows into India come down 30% this year. Our stock markets have been on a negative spiral, next only to Tunisia and Egypt. We know the sort of conditions there are in Tunisia and Egypt. That's where India is internationally. As the Finance Minister, are you concerned?
It's not correct, because even in my very recent visit at Paris to attend the G20 Finance Ministers Conference, everybody is appreciating India's performance. Which countries during this crisis period has achieved 8.6% GDP growth? Yes, inflationary pressure is there. Which country does not have inflationary pressure?
But FDI into India is coming down.
That is not
Indian capital is going abroad.
That is not the only criteria. That is not the only criteria. How the capital flows take place, where the advantages are there. Now, if you look at quantitative easing followed by USA, where the rate of return is little higher, naturally some of the capital is flowing back to there. But any economist would say that is not a very sound method of attracting the capitals. They had to do to meet their own requirements. The quantitative easing, printing money, buying the bonds, giving higher interest. That's why we want more FDI. Yes, there has been a decline in the FDI flow. That's why we have addressed these issues by quantifying the guidelines, qualitatively improving it, reviewing it at the interval of every 6 months. Even in this budget, I have conveyed certain message. Why I have reduced the dividend tax of the resident Indian taxpayers who are having business abroad. They are not bringing their dividend to India because they are to pay tax at the same rate. I have reduced it from 30% to 15%.
But your critics would argue,
message is clear.
But your critics would argue, sir, that the need is not to compile FDI norms. The requirement at this time is to introduce new policies which will attract more FDI into coming into this country. Let me take retail, for example. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of demand. The ministries now seem to be in agreement about about the need for allowing FDI in retail. What is the roadmap? Do we have a plan about what we intend to do and by when?
That is one area, but that is not the only area.
Sure.
We require FDI in infrastructures. We require FDI in manufacturing. We require FDI in other areas, and FDI in retail is one area. Unfortunately, sometimes in our perception we pick up one subject and consider it that is the only solution available. I am afraid as a finance minister and being in the government for quite some time, I do not subscribe to that made easy formula to solve all problems. It doesn't happen.
But you didn't answer the question. Do we have a plan for when we'll allow FDI into retail?
No, so far the question is concerned when it will be done. It does not require premature announcement. Except to satisfy the inquisitiveness of somebody, it does not serve any purpose. When it will be done, when it will be materialized, it will be done. And I do not subscribe to the thesis that India's response to the reforms has been only at a crisis moment. From 91 onwards, we are carrying on the reforms. Reform is a continuing process. Financial reforms which we have introduced, not because of any crisis.
But the
reforms which we have introduced, because every time you are to address a situation which is prevailing, you are not writing thesis for your PhD or filling in the columns in the newspaper. You are running the administration. Therefore, you shall have to respond to keep in view the requirement of the real economy.
You're making a very strong point that announcements don't need to be made in the budget and they don't need to be very dramatic announcements. But the opposition is alleging, and internationally there's concern, that over the last 18 odd months there hasn't been much forward movement. There's a sense that the government itself is in a logjam. Ministers are fighting with each other. Here's a government which is stuck in a warp and is not delivering on governance and administration.
No, that is too oversimplification of the issues. It is not that. Firstly, it is not 18 months. FDI's flow has come down in the last 7-8 months.